Hello, Dr. Sushma Singh this side. Today we start Unit 8 Census Perspective. The decennial census is an important source of information for certain aspects of India's society and economy. The census contains information about the number of people, their age, sex, occupations, educational level, and the like. While pre-colonial states also conducted censuses, this was usually for the limited purpose of taxation and conscription to the army. For the Malayo-Javis context on the Ottoman Empire, the numeration of the caste too was not entirely a new practice introduced by the British colonial government. The Manu Smriti, Kalhana, Rajat Ragini, and the Aine Akbari all have lists of castes. However, the census as we know it today in terms of scale, the kind of information collected and the variety of the administrative used to which it is put can be traced to the modern bureaucratic state. For the British colonists in particular, the census was seen as an essential tool to understand and thereby control the large and diverse Indian population. Caste and religion were viewed as important sociological categories which would explain a variety of other issues, including what we now clearly recognize as unrelated factors like insanity, intelligence, desire, and ability to fight in the army, etc. While religion continues to be enumerated in the census, caste has disappeared from it. Caste was a key census variable from 1871 to 1931. The census of the 1931 was the last census to provide tables of the distribution of population on the basis of caste. Although caste returns were collected in 1941 when they were not tabulated owing to wartime economic measures. In 1951, apart from the data on the scheduled caste and scheduled tribe, limited caste returns were collected from other backward castes. However, the results were not published and were only made available to the first Backward Class Commission. The Constituent Legislative Assembly framing the Census Act of 1948 decided not to include the component of caste on the ground that portrayal of India as a land of many castes, languages and religions had been used by the British colonial authorities to claim that Indians would never be able to unite and govern themselves and therefore needed the British to rule them. However, the government continued to record information on scheduled caste and scheduled tribes in order to monitor the success of various government programs to improve their situation. In the run-up to the 2001 census, there was a fresh debate over whether a person's caste should be recorded in the census. One view was that it was necessary to include caste so that the economic and social status of each caste could be measured, while the other view was that it would be difficult to identify caste and such enumeration would unnecessarily enhance casteism. Eventually, it was decided not to include caste in the census. This unit will deal with the manner in which the census in India has dealt with caste, the effect of caste enumeration in the census on caste identity, the influence of the census on the conceptualization of caste in sociology and the debate which arose in the late 1990s over whether caste should be included in the 2001 census. Now let us move to the point caste in the census. The term caste is commonly accepted as having originated from the Portuguese term casta to describe breeds, species, tribes, etc. and that refers both to the four classical Varna categories and to the jatis or the specific local units in which people identified themselves. In the 17th and 18th century, there was considerable fidelity both at the level of jatis and Varna. Economic differentiation, migration, and ecological difference all played a role in creating new castes or enabling people to change their caste identities through fission and fusion of jatis. In the unsettled condition following the breakup of the Mughal Empire, many chiefs of Adivasi or low caste background became king in their own areas. They claimed Rajput or Kshatriya status and empowered Brahman priests to invent suitable genealogy for themselves. There was no all India ranking of the caste, and caste ranking changed over time. For instance, Durkheim has argued that the separation of religion and politics and the ritual exaltation of the Brahman over the Kshatriya in South India is a product of the colonial period. As colonial rule became more entrenched, the colonial administrators needed to know and understand their native population in order to govern them. In the 19th century, race became a scientific preoccupation with many studies carried out to classify races. The decennial census, along with the series of the imperial gazetteers, ethnographic surveys, settlement records, etc., played an important role in promoting certain ideas of caste and race. Caste and religion were seen as key categories with which to explain native behavior. It is necessary to dwell at length upon the obvious advantage to many branches of the administration in this country of an accurate and well-arranged records of the customs and domestic and social relations of the various castes and tribes. The entire framework of native conduct of individuals are largely determined by the rules of the group to which they belong. For the purpose of the legislation of the judicial procedure of famine relief, of sanitation and dealing with the epidemic disease, and of almost every form of executive action, an ethnographic survey of India and a record of the customs of the people is as necessary an incident of good administration as a cadastral survey of the land and a record of the rights of its tenants. The colonial authorities used caste to explain insanity, the latter being a disease associated with the socially higher and economically more provident classes. However, recording caste in the census was not an easy task. Successive census commissioners described the caste tables as the most troublesome and expensive part of the census, pointing to a vague and conceptual nature of response. Yet, Up to 1931, it was seen as a necessary part of the demographic record and essential for governance. The consequence was a form of systematization that slotted people into arbitrary, often untrue to their experience but separate, mutually exclusive, and thereby innumerable categories. In 1881, in Madras Presidency alone, the inhabitants returned 3,208 different castes, which through grouping were reduced to 309. The process was described by the Risley thus: if the person enumerated gives the name of a well-known tribe or caste, all is well, but he may belong to an obscure caste from the other end of the India. He may give the name of a sect, of a subcaste, of an exogamous sect or section, his occupation, or the province from which he comes. These various alternatives undergo a series of transformation at the hands of the more or less illiterate enumerator, who writes them down in his own vernacular, and the abstractor in the central office, who translates them into English. There begins a laborious and most difficult process of sorting, referencing, cross-referencing, and corresponding with local authorities, which ultimately results in the compilation of the table showing the distribution of inhabitants of India by caste, tribe, race, or nationality. Hutton also remarked on the fact that the number of castes enumerated has gone down from 1981 to 1931, and that the methods employed must have been arbitrary, but noted the inevitability of the selective system of the classification, where individuals were asked not just what their subcaste was, but which of the list subcaste they fitted into. As the Peter Radcliffe notes, a pre-coded approach, even with room for other please specify options, tends to structure responses and introduce distortions. Further, a censored systematization could not allow a person to have two castes or two religions. Even when religious syncretism was recognized, it was dismissed as the essentially primitive character of the religion of the illiterate and uncultured masses, where the 1911 census had recognized several sects as Hindu Mohammedans. In 1921, they were reclassified as either one or the other, except for the Sindh Sangois, who completely refused and were therefore relegated to others. At the same time, as the census authorities standardized and reduced the number of castes, they also insisted on recording all sorts of subcastes in an effort to appear fully scientific and to cover the entire social space. Here we want to close this lecture. Thanks for listening.